Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's episode, this episode is for you if you are looking for your identity. This episode is for you if you are looking for your purpose. This episode is for you if you want to figure out how to use the authority that you already have. And here, to educate me and you on all of those things, we have Ricco McAdory. Ricco, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Crystal, everybody, how are you all doing on this great, wonderful day? I'm excited about the day. I couldn't wait. So I'm glad it's finally here. Absolutely.
Yes, I could not wait after we spoke initially. I was ready. So I'm glad that today is here. So, Ricco, where in the world are you?
I'm in the great state of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Oh,
Well, they say the tide's kind of down now
okay.
because the legendary dynasty coach is no longer coaching, but it's just a shift in transition. People got to get used to it,
It's
but it's
just,
okay.
yeah.
We're,
And
we're
Nick
going we're gonna roll
Saban
with it.
wanted to do something else. Nick Saban wanted to do something else. The audacity. The audacity.
The funny thing is, people try to box you in, like when
Yes.
your identity, they try to make your identity be what you did, when it's really not what you did, it's really who you are. So that's a big
Yes.
difference. So I can understand why he actually made that transition and
Hmm.
why it's a very important lesson for all of us in the transition, that we may not be where we are today. We may not be there maybe in a
Yes.
few years or next year from now, but who
Yes.
you are is not necessarily what you do.
How do you differentiate between the two, Rico? How do you define yourself outside of what you do? And I personally feel like this is an American problem. And
Mhm.
I have several viewers that come in and watch that live outside of America. So please, you guys can jump into the comments on this. But I do feel like this is an American problem because whenever someone is like, hi, how are you? What do the first thing for the most part we go to is our job. This is what we do. I'm in corporate, I'm an insurance broker, I'm a real estate. It's never individual.
Oh, you hit me with a great question. And let's go back a little further. When we
Okay.
were children and we were in school,
Hmm.
what the question was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? But we responded with what we want to do. I want to do, you say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a teacher, or
Yes.
but we're talking about an occupation.
Yes.
See, I really am like, when you look at identity, I'm looking at it from the perspective, I want to be a king, the
Okay.
king that I was designed to be. My fingerprint, identity. Now, my fingerprint is not what I do, but it helps distinguish who I am to do what I do.
Exactly.
Big, big difference. So now, when I look at this identity, what it means, the difference between the two, between identity, and we'll talk about the other one next.
Hmm.
But I'll just do a little hint right now. Identity is who you are, and really the next thing in purpose is what you do. Like what's the reason you're here?
Right.
And I'll give another illustration because I love illustrations. When I used to work at the store has items, and items could look very similar, but what distinguished the two was the barcode.
It's true. Yes. And the price sometimes.
But the barcode and the
But
price
you are
wasn't
right.
what
Barcode distinguishes. Yes.
right, but the price and the barcode is not what you do. The price and the barcode identify who you are from what else is on or in the marketplace or on the shelf.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, you stated that as children, this is so true. We're always asking our kids, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I
Hmm.
personally feel like we started asking children that way too young because they
Right.
don't even know who they are. We're asking kids at 5 and 6, 12, 13 to make these life time decisions, and you don't know who you are at that age. But what experiences do you think have shaped the way we see ourselves, besides the obvious, what do you want to be? What do you want to do when you grow up question?
Well, experiences a lot of times can happen because of the people around us.
Mhm.
And then what are we constantly being fed?
Yes.
We become, my dad taught me this years ago, where he'd say, you become more of what you listen to. And if you
Yes.
repeatedly listen and repeatedly watch examples, you will conditionally become that. So if we're actually being fed, okay, well, say when you're a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say that freely, but when you get older and that same question is asked, what do you want to be free? What is it that you really want to do? Because you've been so programmed,
Hmm.
you and I have been programmed to think, well, it's not so much what I want to do as what I need to do.
Right.
You
Right.
see, the big
Yes.
difference. And so what to do is being highlighted more so than who to become. That
And
makes
we
you
should
unique.
be highlighting who to become, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the part of the journey that, yes, we're excited about the destination, that's the have, and we're excited, maybe or maybe not, about the ways to get there.
Mm.
But it's possible to do and then have certain results, but never become the person that actually stewards well where you're going.
Right. And
Yeah.
why is the journey so important? We hear that, so much, especially in sports. I love sports. So you hear that a lot, especially in sports, that, it's the journey, not the destination. It's the hard work, the discipline, and things like that, not necessarily the destination. Why is the journey so important to finding out who we who we should become?
Well, it's interesting because it's in the journey where
Hmm.
where old habits must die in order for you to see the true you were meant to be. It takes time, and that's one of the things we don't like, especially with today's time.
Right.
We have access to so much so quickly, and we think that it's supposed to be very microwavable because
Hmm.
I see something someone else does, or I see a vision that's been given to me. What I end up doing is I'm like, well, okay, it should be happening just like this, but it really doesn't, because it takes time for you to grow into that which you're going to.
I love
That's
that.
that's a big difference. But see, nobody grew from birth to 18 or 21 overnight. You see, and that's how you have to really begin to look at it, from the position of, yes, I see the vision, but yes, the destination is important, but along the way is a journey, is because there are some things some lies I believed,
Hmm.
some things that were input or shared with me, that as I go on this journey, that I slow down so I can speed up to become more efficient. I begin to see and learn some things like, wait a minute, so I can be creative and not conform. I
Right.
can, I can, and this is for me a big one, because let's say, I'm not saying anyone would do this today, and they just might, but if you've been programmed to be, let's say, an employee, nothing wrong with that,
Right.
but then you're being called out, or the system that once received you is now rejecting you. Do you actually continue to conform, to be smaller, to go back to where you've been regurgitated from? Or do you actually now dig deeper to be that creative entrepreneur that the rejection was a signal for you to
Right.
become?
Right. And
You see what I mean?
perhaps the rejection is exactly what you needed, Rico, to force you or push you into this entrepreneurial spirit, or, whatever that looks like for you. If
Mhm.
not for the rejection, is if not for you getting fired, if not for your boss mistreating you, you would have never left or stepped off that cliff to try something else.
I will tell you this. Sometimes we can be so comfortable with what we've outgrown
Yes.
to a point. where when we don't move by decision, we'll be forced to move at some point. You're going to have
Absolutely.
to eventually jump somewhere, even if you may be in a position you don't like right now. You may have that to do like I did. Maybe for a time work at nights and stock shelves while you're still doing your business and all, right? But the beautiful thing about that was it was the skills you learned along the way. You learn how to serve people even in a place when you didn't feel like serving.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are going to be days that even in your own business, you're not going to feel like serving and you're accountable to you. Nobody else is going to really
Right.
be behind you saying, you got to get up and do this. No, you have to really be inspired to do it, even when you don't want to. You see,
Yes.
it's in journeys like that where I may be on somewhere where I don't want to be, but what's my attitude in where I am to help me shift. So when I do show up to this position, I can show up my best when I'm scheduled to. And then when I'm not there in my discretionary time, what do I do to continue to build? I can't tell you the number of relationships, even when I was in that season, really helped me grow and develop to a point in what I'm doing now and helping people know more about who they are, helping them this distance between who they are and what they do so they can serve effectively, regardless of what position they're in.
Again, I love sports. And if you've been watching my podcast, you know that by now.
Mm-hmm.
Athletes deal with that so much, Rico, because
Yes.
when it's time for them to retire or when Mother Nature is pushing them out,
Mm-hmm.
they have, not all of them, but we've read the stories. We've seen the docu series where the athletes, they fall into this sadness, this depression, because they have no idea who they are outside of football. They have
Mm-hmm.
no idea who they are outside of baseball, and they have this question: what do I do now? Who am
Mm-hmm.
I now?
Mm-hmm.
Because they have not separated themselves, as you stated, from what they do
Right.
and who they are.
Mm-hmm. It's. I'm glad you brought that up because that is obvious. Because someone who's been working on their life at a dream like that as an athlete, and
Hmm.
your body can only take so much. You can't
Right.
do that for the rest of your life. And so you're so caught up into what you do that again, you don't pay attention to the signs that I'm not always going to do this,
Right.
right? And even when it gets here, now instead of being proactive, you become reactive.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
and now I'm not saying it's too late, but the work that you should have done when you were actually in to prepare for where you're going, now you're backtracking in a state of hurry up. Now I'm feeling the
Yes.
repercussions of what I didn't do or take it action.
Right.
Now I'm having to rush to become it. And so I think I shared this yesterday when I was in a men's group. And what we were talking about was sometimes we don't, our guard is down when things come into our mind sometimes when we don't see it until later when we realize this became a bad habit and now you're feeling the effects of the bad habit. And
Hmm.
now you're like, wait a minute, I don't like how this feels. And so I want to change it immediately, not realizing that it took you time to
Right.
actually develop that habit, that stronghold. And now you're going to have to be intentional to confront and overcome that stronghold, then break the grip of that. But it's going to take consistent effort. It's going to take consistent work to do. But here's the beautiful thing about it. I learned this in our group as well. We have this saying where I'm not getting better, but I'm made brand new.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I operate from my brand newness, which is my new identity now.
Hmm.
That positions me to do the right action steps to produce the results. I'm not fighting trying to go get change. I'm already changed. I'm just fighting from that position, not trying to go
Yes.
do it. Big difference.
Yes. Oh, I love that. You dropping some gems on here, Rico. I love it.
Awesome.
So, what does a person's cultural background have to do with them finding, discovering their sense of self, their identity? Or does it have anything to do with that?
Well, it really takes a decision,
Okay.
right? Because yes, the culture can make an impact. You may not be able to handle, or you may not be able to do anything about where you came from, but you can make a decision in your present to impact your future where you're going.
Okay.
Big difference. And sometimes you can be in an environment that's not as favorable for you, but what you have to do consistently is, I have learned that I have to hear information repetitively that is going to expand who I'm becoming, more so than reminding me or rehearsing me
Mm-hmm.
of what I've been through or where I came from. See, I understand, yes, their influences, their voices,
Right.
but I've learned through personal leadership growth that, again, you become more of what you listen to. And whatever you continue to hear over and over, that's the story that's going to repeat inside of you, and that's going to influence what you do.
Yes.
So the culture, yes, the culture, you may be surrounded, even if you're in the place you want to be, there's going to be challenges. There's going to
Mm-hmm.
be some things in the culture that's going to actually kind of rock you and make you be like, almost kind of doubt sometimes, am I really called? Am I really chosen? Am I really for this? You really are, but again, it's forcing you. The pressure of what's around you should really force you to look within you, the gems and diamonds you have, to impact the people around you.
Okay.
You see what I
And
mean?
how does, and I want to stay on that same topic.
Mhm.
How does one do that? How do you impact the people and the environment around you when maybe certain parts of your identity or certain parts of your cultural background is not accepted? What are some ways that people can do that?
Well, I would say this. Sometimes, even in your environment or where you come from, let's say your hometown, right? Thankful for the hometown. But
Mhm.
sometimes you got to be willing to branch out into other areas that are not where you're used to. You ever heard the saying that strangers have your money?
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've heard it quite a few. Yeah, strangers. Because sometimes familiarity, as we've always heard, familiarity can breed contentment.
Yes.
It can help us be comfortably stuck in a place that is no longer serving us. So some of the things you got to do is, you almost have to intentionally force yourself to go out, or go into an area, or maybe make some calls, may connect outside of your region, even though you're still in your region. So now what's happening is, you're being fed in a way that's expanding what you've been seeing, so that now, even while you walk in the presence of those you're familiar with, they notice that it's something different about you. You
Hmm.
didn't limit your potential to their reality.
Right.
When you see, I am big. I'm a big proponent of this. Yes, environment makes a huge difference.
Hmm.
But I do believe that sometimes, even though you may be in an environment you don't want to be in, you can make the decision and become the person. And as you become the person on the journey, you attract the people who actually are familiar, or have been where you're going. And I found that those people can actually help introduce you to the season
Yes.
of life that you've been seeing as a vision in the wrong environment.
Right.
It's going to help kind of pull you out of that, because now you're seeing another picture that you didn't see before. But now, because you're being exposed to other environments, you're exposed to bigger, you're exposed to stronger. Now
Hmm.
what's going to happen is, the people that were familiar with you being this small, now when you begin to expand, they notice that certain things they can't do this time they used to do, to trick you off guard.
I
That
love that when that happens. I
Yeah,
love it when that
yeah.
happens.
You see? So yes, the environment, sometimes we can't, when starting out, Yes, you may want to change it right away, but I've learned, even being in an environment that I didn't want to be in, or sometimes when I felt like I was demoted or I
Mm-hmm.
lost, and I was like, it felt like I took a step back. What I found was I had to change my attitude about going back, knowing that if I may be going back, I'm not staying back forever. But I'm here now to develop and grow so that now I can understand what it feels like. So when I get back up to where I'm going, I don't look down on the people I was around. I sometimes you gotta, oh, I heard this saying. Sometimes you gotta go out. Sometimes they'll consider you a sellout. They gotta come back to help out.
Oh, look, we got somebody need to be writing this stuff down. They need to be writing this down. Okay, Rico, let's talk about purpose. Explain to us what is one's purpose.
Very simply, let me backtrack a bit. When I used to confuse identity and purpose because we thought they were intertwined. They're not.
Okay.
I believe I was telling you not too long ago that purpose is what reason or what problem made your presence necessary. See,
Yes.
it's a problem that you are not created to take up space. You're created and deposited in this earth to solve a problem. And if you can't
Yes.
find out what that problem is, you'll end up being a copy of what already is. And then the people who have the problem you're supposed to solve, they're going to remain in bondage to that problem because you did not know what problem, what purpose made your presence necessary for such a time as this.
Yes. 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 Oh
Mhm,
my goodness. Okay, so how does someone figure out or find out what is this problem
mhm.
that I am here to fix? How do you find that out?
Good question. I'll respond with a question like Jeopardy.
Okay.
What people have been coming to you with a problem already, and you've helped them, and their lives are better because you answered their problem or you did something for them. See, it's not like this mysterious, strange thing.
Hmm.
Sometimes we're doing it already. We're solving the problem already, but here's the kicker: we're not
Yes,
aware. We're not
that we
aware
are.
of it. You're already doing it. I'll say this. I'm a man of faith. I'm gonna give this story real quick. Joseph interprets dreams.
Hmm.
What do you think it was that actually got him promoted?
Him interpreting dreams.
But it was him interpreting dreams at first as a young man that really got him in trouble because he did not have to really he was being arrogant to the point that he had more confidence in the gift, like, well, this is what the gift is, this is what I'm dreaming, right?
Hmm.
Knowing that his brothers hated him, knowing that it was an issue, it was a friction there, but he still kept talking about his dreams. But it was never, now I'll say this, it was never the intent because it was this destiny to get to the palace now. But sometimes we can get premature and really can become, I don't want to say it, but it can be true. We can have pride and be arrogant in our gift and like, well, this is what it is. And, this is my gift. And I'm interpreting your dream. But he
Hmm.
really did not have to go through the pit, even though we read about him going to the pit.
Yes.
But the development path, look at King David. It was a little bit different. Think about it, what David's path was. David didn't go through the pit. David went through some process. But Joseph, his dreams, interpret those dreams. Yes, it got him in trouble, but even in prison, oh, this is good. Even in prison, he was still favored. Even in prison, he was still interpreting dreams.
Hmm.
It was a dream. Look at that. Well, look at this. Oh my gosh, I'm getting excited. So think about this. It was the dream he arrogantly used that opened the
Okay.
door for him to be thrown in the pit. It was the dream, the gift of the dream, that he interpreted for the butler and the baker while being in prison. And it was the dream, the gift of dreaming that the butler or one butler forgot about, because Joseph said, look, when you get out of here, say a good word for me to get me out of this prison. And it says he waited 2 years before it came up again where Pharaoh had a dream. And when Pharaoh had a dream, then the butler was reminded of the dream that Joseph, while being in a place he didn't want to be in, interpreted for him. And guess what? Now that referral came back to where it called Joseph from the pit to the palace to interpret the dream of the king.
Absolutely.
So Joseph's dream, the gift didn't change. And sometimes when things don't go a certain way, or when we actually are all working in our vision and dream that God's given us, we think it's a bad thing because of the resistance that we're facing. But really, it's not a bad thing. It's a blessed thing because it's preparing you for what's to come.
How do you see, and thank you for that Bible lesson, how do you see that what you're being, the pushback that you're receiving in the moment, I feel like people don't see that as a good thing.
Right.
So how do you in the moment stay focused on your purpose?
Ooh. It takes humility. Realizing that this isn't all about you.
Okay.
But also realizing that in a way it is about you, because when you see that your purpose is much bigger than you, you'll be humble. You'll want to be humble enough to yield where you are, because you cannot go. You can dream about going to the next place, but how are you stewarding the place you're in now? That's a big thing.
Yes.
And so your attitude, here's what's important, your attitude and your motive. Why do you want to be promoted? Are you doing it to be seen, or are you doing it to serve?
Yes.
If my attitude is to be seen, I'm not going to really technically be promoted, even though it may look good on paper. But if my attitude is in the place where I am, I'm serving to a point where it seems like I'm doing more than what I'm required to do. And others are kind of looking at me like, you don't have to do that. But I'm like, yes, I do have to do this, because what I do on this level can actually be a sign or an indication of how I steward at the next. I would work at the store. People would look like, why are you? We would have breaks, right? And sometimes I would miss the breaks. You know why I would miss them? Because I wanted to make sure I got some things done.
Okay.
And sometimes it required me to miss certain breaks. Sometimes it required me to cut short certain things. And they're like, you don't really have to do that. I'm like, yeah, I do. Because how I do at this level is going to impact the people that work with me where I'm going.
Right. And how do you, I mean, you are giving some great information, Ricco. How do you, just as a human, push back on that, or change your thinking when people are saying stuff like, you don't really have to do that, you doing too much, stay in your lane? Like, when you start getting that feedback, how do you mentally guard yourself against that, and how do you prevent yourself from starting to believe it?
Well, one of the things is you have to come already with a vision.
Okay.
And you realize that you may be in that place, but you're not there to stay. And so how you do, in other words, my attitude and how I handle what I have says a lot more than what my words do. If by chance, what keeps me going is most people, we've been trained for comfort, or we've been trained to do just enough to get by. But what I heard one kind of influencer, one of the top speakers in the world, say is that when layoffs come or mergers and acquisitions come, the person who's doing the least is going to get cut first. Most times. Because what you do consistently shows up over time.
Right.
And if you're showing up halfway, if you're showing up just quote unquote, I'm just here to get my hours, or I'm just here to get my check. What you've done, you've limited your capacity to just that scale, or that's just that check where you are.
Yes.
You don't know what other opportunities are out there when your attitude is, I'm doing this with the right attitude, not so much for me, but how can I help with the bottom line with this company? Or how can I help with the bottom line of who I'm serving? See, if I come in with an attitude of how I manage someone else's is really going to be determined how I manage my own.
Mm-hmm.
If you jump out there and want to start a business out of ambition, but you have not really stewarded where you are, what ends up happening is you have planted a seed, and that seed is going to come back as a harvest. So the thing that you planted comes back in the harvest to you of what you did when you were on someone else's position, because now you actually were lazy, or now you actually were being slothful, like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just another day. And so here's the thing: you get on that job or someone else's position, and you become a taker rather than disciplining yourself to become a giver. That's the difference. When I take and I operate with a closed fist, I can't receive anymore. But when I go, whether it's in my own business or working somewhere else, whatever I do, I realize that as a giver, I make room to receive more.
Yes. Okay.
That's
How
how I
does
get
that
over that. Yeah.
how does that show up in your everyday life? Your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
serving,
Mm-hmm.
even your mentality about serving, or where you are at the
Mm-hmm.
job, or where you are in your life. How
Mm-hmm.
does that show up every day? Because I know at the beginning of the conversation you defined purpose as, or one of the definitions you said was purpose is finding the problem
Mm-hmm.
that you were put here to help out with.
Yes.
How does that show up every single day in your life? How does the serving, the mentality, the way you think, how does that show up every day in your life?
When I was in the position I was in,
Mm-hmm.
I was still dealing with people.
Okay.
So because I was dealing with people, I'm naturally, by nature, I'm a teacher. I'm gifted as a teacher.
We can see
So,
that.
uh, I mean, when you really do, that's one of the signs when you know you're doing what you were made to do. It's like it doesn't really technically feel like work, even though work is involved.
Yes.
So basically, I'm just becoming it. You see, and you see I heard a man by Dr. Miles Monroe say this. The Greek word for aragon means to become. The Greek word for work means is aragon, and it means the work means to become.
Mm-hmm.
So when I become it, it's like it just influences what I do. And so I'm telling you, what helped me really get through that, and I understood, even in an environment that I didn't want to be in, or the challenges I was facing, I realized that I'm a gifted teacher. So when I see somebody and I'm having a conversation, even if I'm stocking shelves, you know what happens? People come to me and ask me questions. People come to me and tell me certain things
Mm.
about their situation. That's not even work related. Or maybe it could be a difficult. One sister was having a very difficult situation she was dealing with. And so I'm either sometimes I'll give an answer, or sometimes I'll just be there just as a listening ear. Not
Right.
so much for me to judge them, and sometimes people just want you to be there, right? And in the position that I'm in as a teacher, I deal with people, so I have to be patient to listen with people. If so, though I was at a store stocking shelves, I had one person who was a mentor told me one time, he's like, well, you ain't serving nobody there stocking shelves. I'm like, I get what he meant. But when I look back after he said that comment, I
Mm-hmm.
said, technically I did. Maybe not in a way that you thought, but I can't tell you the number of people who I was blessed to be able to impact and meet along their journey that helped
Yes.
them go to another place. See what I mean? So
Yes.
I'm just giving my example of, yes, when I would work with people as a teacher, that never changes. You're a people person, regardless of the vehicle, whether it's at a store or whether it's in your business, whether it's sales. Like if for instance, if you're in business and you're dealing with sales, the truth of the matter is you got to know how to listen more than talk.
You do. You do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Let's talk about authority. Explain to us what is authority and working in your authority.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite here. I would say the authority is, what change have you been authored to create? And I didn't speak Ebonics when I said author. I did that on purpose. All right. Authored, I capitalized author for a reason, and then
Mm-hmm.
lowercase e. Most times we hear about authority and we're accustomed to it being about being told what to do by people we may or may not like. Those may be in
Or
it.
like in a negative way. I feel like a lot of times when people hear that word or see that, they have a negative connotation associated with it.
Absolutely, and it cringe, right? And I was looking at this between at the word authority, and I saw two definitions in one word. Really,
Mhm.
when you look at authority, yes, the negative connotation of it, we talk about that, but look at the positive. That's why we took the word author and capitalized it, because the root word of authority is author. And then you look at the
Yes.
definition of author, it's one who creates something. So when we talk about authority, it's like you being the personal brand, or you're being the go-to person in that field that people think of as you are the authority in that space. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So when I finally embraced who I am and the authority of my life concerning
Mhm.
identity, I sometimes I'll go to church and people are like, "Hey, identity king," you know what I mean? They're saying these things because that's the lane that I'm assigned to, identity. You know what I
Yes.
mean? When you look at Apple, what do you think about? You
Yeah.
see what?
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, you see.
I mean, even though it's
Mm-hmm.
Cook, I can't call his first name, but I think it's Steve Cook now, but Steve
Tim
Jobs.
Cook.
Yeah,
Tim
Tim
Cook.
Cook. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I always think of Steve Jobs first.
Yes. When you see authority, what imprint in the minds of people? What are they thinking when they think of a problem or they think of something? What do they think? Do they think about you or do they think about someone else? And I think
Mhm.
the challenge can be with authority is, because it's so unique, we've been trained and conditioned to think it's better to do a few things to get one result rather than focusing on the one thing that can open up different opportunities.
Absolutely. What does authority look like, Rika, when it's rooted in justice and love?
Wow. Authority looks like humility. Authority never,
Hmm.
as justice and love is rooted at it, is never to tear down, but it builds up. That doesn't mean correction doesn't happen in a sense of letting people know the truth. But a lot of times people try to tell truth, but they tell it in a way that condemns a person rather than convicts them. See, if I
Hmm.
condemn you, when you leave my presence, you're going to feel down.
Yes.
But when I actually convict you, I'm just reminding you of how powerful and authentic you really are. And
Yeah.
you leave my presence empowered, wanting to take the next step, to go deeper into who you were made to be and operate and flow from that without being fearful of, well, if I be my authentic self, what's going to happen or I may lose. here's the thing: how can you lose when you actually have it on the inside of you?
Right. You're living in your purpose. To go back to what we were talking about, you're living in your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How can someone have authority, be in authority
Mm-hmm.
without compromising their values and without compromising who they are?
Oh wow! I'll give you a good example.
Hmm.
When you walk in authority and people want to actually chew you out, you don't come down to the level of where they're chewing you out. No, because here's the thing. I realize that here's how I look at things now. In the role of authority,
Hmm.
other people could do certain things, and it seems like they can get away with it.
Absolutely. But when it comes to you,
See. So if
yes.
if I act like other people, what's happened is not only does it hurt me, but it hurts the influence with people who look up to me.
Hmm.
That's why in being married for 23 years, I realized that how my example is with my wife. If I was to go crazy, I realized the repercussions it would have, how I would be, the respect would be lost with the people that I've impacted. Not just the people I've impacted, but especially my children.
Yeah.
See, so when you look at it, authority in the context in which you ask me that question, you stay in humility because you realize what you've been given is not an entitlement, but it's a how can I say, it's a blessing. It's a gift, and you want to do the best you can to steward that gift well, because you're going to have to give account for that gift that you stewarded.
Yes.
Now, if you don't have any accountability, that's another thing. Accountability helps you stay focused. This is why
Yes.
we have mentors, why we have coaching,
Hmm.
because you and I have blind spots. We can't see everything, but that is why we're blessed to have other people who can walk alongside with us and help us see things from a different perspective than what we were seeing initially. This is why I love this whole thing. I read a book called by Dan Sullivan or Benjamin Hardy. It's
Hmm.
called Who Not How. And basically, what I love about that book is it helped me shift my question from asking how can I to who can help me do it.
Oh, yes. Yes. Now, staying on authority here, Rico, you've said just a couple times, authority given.
Mhm.
Is authority given to you, or do you, and I hate to use the word take because it sounds so aggressive, or do you take authority?
I'll help you with that.
Hmm.
Authority, yes, is given, but power takes. If I
Okay,
lust for
explain.
if I lust for power, think about a dictator. Dictators
Hmm.
lust for power, and because they lust for power, they illegitimately take from other people.
Okay.
But if you understand what you've been given, you've been authorized, created in an authentic way, authorized to function a certain way. When you understand authenticity is not about your self seeking power, it is about serving other people. This is why, when you look at it, um, men and women were not created to actually, how can I say, lord over people as a slavery,
Okay.
but we were designed to serve a territory. See, in the kingdom is territory. What territory that you've been
Yes.
authorized to oversee? See, I don't have to be afraid or intimidated because you may be more gifted than me in a certain area. When I understand authority, I don't cop block or I don't try to hinder. I actually celebrate and I try to bring you along, because if you win, we both win. It doesn't matter who gets the credit. When you
Yes.
understand authority, you will not lust for power. But when you're so focused on lusting and chasing power, you will be blind to the authority.
I love that. I've said that so many times. I love that, Ricco. I love that. We are getting ready to wrap up, and I want you to just put together. I know, we've spoken about identity and purpose and
Mhm,
authority and like
mhm,
separate blocks during this conversation, but you have actually put that together in your own little way and
mhm,
formed an acronym,
mhm,
IPAA.
mhm.
Quickly explain to us that acronym, putting everything together as you have done.
Absolutely. Thanks for the honor to let me do this. It is when I this came about because I was looking at in business, of course, income producing activity, IPA. And so one time I was in my just meditation, just quiet time, and just got revealed to me, well, just as in businesses said income producing activity, well, you could be doing the wrong income producing activity if you don't know your identity, purpose, and authority. So you got to know the right IPA to do the correct IPA.
Yes.
IPA to IPA. And so the extra A is assignment. So let's go through it. Identity is who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is what problem made your presence a necessity. Authority is what change have you been authorized to make, or how do you function according to your identity and purpose? And then A, the fourth A is assignment. Who are you called to serve?
Okay, so I have like two other questions, but let me just follow up on that extra A, the assignment.
Mhm.
How do you know who you are called to serve? How do you find that out?
Ooh, well, I can say this. I would like to take credit for this, but I cannot because I heard a mentor that I worked with one time say this. He said, most times your who is who you once were.
Mm,
And so once the who became clear, even now in what I do now, I'm clear. My who is faith based coaches, consultants, experts. The same thing I'm dealing with right? You see what I mean? And so
yes.
because that was clear, I could write in a manner or speak in a manner in which not only can I identify with, but they can identify with. And I
Yes.
guarantee you, with the people in your audience, there's some people who fit into that category, and they can identify with what has been said. You see what I mean? I had to be realize that I'm really my first who. I'm really a guinea pig. I'm really like, okay, now that I'm clear on this, it became obvious to people that were being attracted, that were being brought along the way. They were in the same category, but they just needed someone to help walk them through. So I'm not delivered or I'm not saved or whatever for my own reason. I'm really delivered and saved and brought forth, brought out to help other people up.
Hmm.
You see?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you are a coach, Ricco. You are a teacher. We can all hear it. I'm speaking from my entire audience. We can all hear it in the way you speak with such passion and energy about these topics.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say, or what would you say your intention in this space of coaching, in this space of teaching about identity, purpose, authority, assignment? What is your intention in this space?
It's really to help a lot of those faith-based leaders, even if they're not, but even if you're like I said, a coach consultant and an expert who has a message.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is the pressure of changing that is happening so fast. You thinking that in order to get ahead, you've got to copy what already exists, when in fact
Right.
you've already got the wisdom on the inside of you to release gems, to release to release gold, to release abundance, increase. But here's the thing, you may be shaky about it because you don't know how to execute it or how to deliver it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if regardless of how swift things are changing, especially in our world today, at the time we're doing this podcast, regardless of what changes on the outside, what I really do is help you think more about who you are from the inside, and that positions you to change how you do what you do that leads to results without you compromising the authentic you. So many people show up in places just to fit in to what already exists because that is common, that is popular. But I'm talking about if you don't step into doing that which is unpopular,
Mm-hmm.
or which is different, what's going to happen is you're going to blend in and be a cheaper version of other people. And so I'm actually helping you really do a deep dive. I really
Mm-hmm.
call this soul surgery because you're looking at whatever Goliath that you've avoided, whatever giant that you've avoided, or you could be hiding. You could think you're successful, but really that could be in a way be a facade because it's something deeper that you've got to actually expose, confront, so that you can overcome, not just for you, but even your seed after you.
Right, right. So it could be generational.
I would 100, 1000% say it's generational because sometimes there's someone in your gene line, in your bloodline, they may have started this what you're doing, but they didn't finish it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're the one to help be the deliverer to help bring those in the generation that could be gone already, but the negative stigma, you could be one to break the generational curse and release the generational blessing. But it's going to take someone in that bloodline to stand up and make the difference and go through the resistance, go through the transformation, and realize that maybe this didn't happen because of me, but it's not going to continue to happen because of me.
Yeah, yeah. It stops here. It stops here with me. Okay, I hate to say this is my final question for you, Ricco McAdory. I hate to say it, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it.
Understood.
Who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Didn't I already give you one?
You did. She's gonna be phenomenal.
Oh, so that doesn't count.
You can
Because
say her and then send me somebody
I'm,
else
I'm
later.
I'm going to say her. I
Okay.
know there are others. I've got quite a few, but I'm going to say one person in particular. Definitely her, Eugenia Marie.
Hmm.
Her story is amazing. She's my sister, and we both go to the same church, and she's a phenomenon. And wow, I heard her not too long ago say just some interesting nuggets, and I mean every time it's always something like what you're saying with me. I get that with her. Like it's just gems she drops.
Yes.
And it's like sets a blaze, sets a trail, and I'm so super ecstatic about her as one of the guests. I do have another good friend, quite a few. His name is he okay. His name is Gilberto
Okay.
Herrera. You hear me, G? All right, I'm shouting you out. But no, he's the one. I have to shout him out because he was the one. When you look at your God-given identity, where the branding and where it all started, yeah, he was there with me in the beginning, helping me really see when my mindset really wasn't all the way there when we would have our coaching sessions. He was the
Hmm.
first coach that would stop what he had going on just to check and see how I was in my mindset. And
Yes.
he's been that great brother and supporter through the years, and even right now being with him and learning some things from him, it's helping me even shape even our coaching program that we're having now. So he's another, and I think I'll say one more, and
Okay.
his name is Corey Michael. He's our creative director, the graphics guy. So we just had a session last week that he really helped clarify some things. And I want to say these things and share this with these people about these people because think about it. You have to be poured into in order to effectively pour into other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have definitely poured into me. And he just asked me a couple of simple questions last week. And it's just like, because if you're a multi-gifted person, sometimes if you're not careful, you can try to attack everything at one time instead of like picking a lane to go and then opening up. And so he actually helped me understand that, really get clear on it. And so those are just quite a few people. I know so many other people, but I got a list. But those are the people that came to my mind.
Okay.
Moment. I'll send you some more too.
Excellent.
Via
We will take
email.
your list.
Yeah,
I will take your list.
Take my list. So even though I'm just letting you know, those of you that know me, if I didn't say your name, it doesn't mean that you weren't valuable. You are. It's just a big list. So
exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Ricco, for being on my podcast. You dropped some real gems. You dropped some real, we need to write this down. I'm going to have to go back and listen and write it down because I couldn't write it down while I was doing the podcast. But best believe I'm going back and listen and write it down. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for living in your purpose, for understanding your identity, and then sharing that with me and my audience. I appreciate it so much.
It was an honor. I can't wait. Look, I know it's time, maybe another time in the future, but for right now, I'm ecstatic that you have me on as a guest. Truly honored. Thank you, Crystal, and your audience.
You are more than welcome. More than welcome. And to my audience, to my listeners, you can get Ricco's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.